औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम इन्नल्लाह मलाइकतु युसल्लूना अलन नबी या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू सल्लु अलैहि वसल्लिमू तस्लीमा अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद वअज्जल फरजहum। औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अन जाबिर इब्न अब्दुल्लाह अंसारी अन फातिमा ज़हरा अलैहा सलाम बिन्त रसूलिल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वआलैहि क़ाला समिअतु फातिमा अन्नहा क़ाला दख़ला अला अबी रसूलिल्लाह फिल बादिल अय्याम फ़क़ाला अस्सलामु अलैकी या फातिमतु फ़क़ुल्तु अलैका अस्सलाम क़ाला इन्नी अजिदु फ़ी बदनि ज़अफ़न फ़क़ुल्तु लहु इज़्ज़ुका बिल्लाहि अबताहु मिन ज़अफ़ी फ़क़ाला या फातिमतु ईतिनी बिलकिसाइल यमानी फ़ग़त्तैनी बिही वअतैतु बिलकिसाइल यमानी फ़ग़त्तैतु बिही वसिरतु अंज़ुरु इलैहि वइज़ा वजहु यतलहु कअन्नहु बद्रु फ़ी लैलति तमामिही व कमालिही वमा कानत इल्ला साअतन वइज़ा बिवलदिल हसन क़द अक़बल वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैका या उम्मा फ़क़ुल्तु अलैका अस्सलाम या ख़ुरतल ऐनि समरति फ़वादी फ़क़ाल या उम्मा इन्नी अशम्मु इंदकी राहियतन तय्यबा कान्ना राहियतु जद्दी रसूलिल्लाह फ़क़ुल्तु नअम इन्ना जद्दका तहतल किसा फ़अक़बलल हसन नहवल किसा वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैका या जद्दा या रसूलल्लाह अतज़नु ली अन अदख़ुल मअका तहतल किसा फ़क़ाल वअलैका अस्सलाम या वलदी व या साहिबल हौज़ी क़द अज़िनतु लका फ़दख़ल मअहु तहतल किसाई वमा कानत इल्ला साअतन वइज़ा बिवलदिल हुसैन क़द अक़बल वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैकी या उम्मा फ़क़ुल्तु अलैका अस्सलाम या वलदी या क़ुर्रतल ऐनि वस्समरति फ़वादी फ़क़ाल ली या उम्मा इन्नी अशम्मु इंदकी राहियतन तय्यबा कान्ना राहियतु जद्दी रसूलिल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वआलिहि फ़क़ुल्तु नअम इन्ना जद्दका वअख़ाका तहतल किसा फ़दनल हुसैनु नहवल किसाई वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैका या जद्दा अस्सलामु अलैका या मन इख्तरअल्लाह अतज़ानु ली अन अकून मअकुमा तहतल किसाई फ़क़ाल वअलैका अस्सलाम या वलदी या शाफ़िअल उम्मती क़द अज़िनतु लका फ़दख़ल मअहुमा तहतल किसाई अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला फ़अक़बल इंद ज़ालिका अबुल हसन अली इब्न अबी तालिब वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैकी या उम्मा या बिन्ते रसूलिल्लाह फ़क़ुल्तु वअलैका अस्सलाम या अबुल हसन या अमीरुल मोमिनीन फ़क़ाल या फ़ातिमतु इन्नी अशम्मु इंदकी राहियतन तय्यबा कअन्ना राहियतु अख़ी व इब्न अम्मी रसूलिल्लाह फ़क़ुल्तु नअम हा हुवा मा वलदैका तहतल किसाई फ़अक़बल अलीयुन नहवल किसा वक़ाल अस्सलामु अलैका या रसूलल्लाह अतज़ानु ली अन अकून मअकुम तहतल किसाई क़ाल लहु वअलैका अस्सलाम या अख़ी या वसी व ख़लीफ़ती व साहिबल लिवाई क़द अज़िनतु लका फ़दख़ल अलीयुन तहतल किसाई अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व अला सुम्मा अतैतु नहवल किस्सा व क़ुल्तु अस्सलामु अलैका या अबता या रसूलल्लाह अतज़ानु ली अन अकूनु मअकुम तहतल किसाई क़ाल वअलैका अस्सलाम या बिन्ती व या बिज़ती क़द अज़िनतु लकी फ़दख़लतु तहतल किसाई फलम्मा तमन्ना जमीअन तहतल किसाई अख़ज़ा बिरसूलिल्लाहि बतरल फिल किसाई व हुमा बियदिल यमना इला समाई व क़ाल अल्लाहुम्मा इन्ना हाउलाई अहलुल बैती व ख़ासती व हम्मती लहमहुम लहमी व दमहुम दमी युअलिमुनी मा युअलिमुहुम व यहज़ुनुनी मा यहज़ुनुहुम अना हर्बुन लिमन हारबहुम व सिल्मुन लिमन सालमहुम व अदुव्वुन लिमन आदाहुम व मुहिब्बुन लिमन आबाहुम इन्नहु मिन्नी व अना मिनहुम फजल सलवातिका व बरकातिका व रहमतिका व गुफ़रानिका व रिदवानिका अलैया व अलैहिम व अज़हिब अनहुम रिस्ता व तहहिरहुम तत्हीरा फ़क़ाल अल्लाहु अज़्ज़ व जल या मलाइकतु व या सुक्काना समावाति इन्नी मा ख़लक़तु समा मुमनियता वला अर्दन मदियतन वला क़मरन मुनीरा वला शमसन मुदियतन वला फ़लकन यदूर वला बहरन यज़री वला फुल्कन यसरी इल्ला फ़ी महब्बतिल हाउलाइल ख़मसतिल लज़ीना हम तहतल किसाई फ़क़ाल अमीनु जिब्राईल या रब्बी व मन तहतल किसा फ़क़ाल अज़्ज़ व जल हुम अहल बैतिन नबुव्वा व मादन रिसाला हम फ़ातिमा व अबूहा व बालूहा व बनूहा फ़क़ाल जिब्राईल या रब्बी अतज़ानु लिअन अहबत लिल अर्ज़ि लियकूनु माहुम सादिसा फ़क़ाल अल्लाहु नअम क़द अज़िनतु लका फ़हबतल अमीनु जिब्राईल फ़क़ाल अस्सलामु अलैका या रसूल अल्लाह अल अली ला यफ़रक़ु अस्सलाम व यख़ुस्सु बित्तहिय्यति वल इकरामी व यक़ूलु लका व इज़्ज़ती व जलाली इन्नी मा ख़लक़तु समाअ ममनियता वला अर्दन मुदियतन वला क़मरन मुनीरा वला शमसन मुदियतन वला फ़लकन यदूर वला बहरन यज़री वला फुल्कन यसरी इल्ला लिअजलिकुम व मुहब्बतिकुम व क़द अज़नु लि अन अदख़ुल मअकुम फ़अतअज़नु लि या रसूलल्लाह फ़क़ाल रसूलुल्लाह व अलैकुस्सलाम या अमीन वही अल्लाह इन्नहु नअम क़द अज़िनतु लका फ़दख़ल जिब्राईल माना तहतल किसाई फ़क़ाल लि अबी इन्नल्लाह क़द औहा इलैकुम यक़ूल इन्नमा युरीदुल्लाहु लियज़हिबा अन्कुम रिज्सा अहलिल बैति व युत्तहिरकुम तत्हीरा फ़क़ाल अली लि अबी या रसूलल्लाह अख़बिरनी मा जुलूसिना हाज़ा तहतल किसाई मिनल फ़ज़्लि इंदल्लाह फ़क़ाल नबी वल्लज़ी बअसनी बिलहक़्क़ि नबिय्या वस्तफ़ानी बिरिसालति नबिय्या मा ज़ुकिरा ख़बरुना हाज़ा फ़ी महफ़िलिन मिन महाफ़िलिल अहलिल अर्ज़ व फ़ीहि जमुअन मिन शिय्अतिना मुहिब्बीना इल्ला नज़लत अलैहिमुर रहमा व हफ़त बिहिम मलाइकतु व अस्तग़फ़र लहुम इल्ला यतफ़रक़ू फ़क़ाल अलियुन इज़्न वल्लाहि फ़ुज़्नु फ़अज़ू रवा बिरब्बिल काबा फ़क़ाल नबी सानिया या अली वल्लज़ी बअसनी बिलहक़्क़ि नबिय्या वस्तफ़ानी बिरिसालति नबिय्या मा ज़ुकिरा ख़बरुना हाज़ा फ़ी महफ़िलिन मिन महाफ़िलिल अहलिल अर्ज़ व फ़ीहि जमुअन मिन शिय्अतिना मुहिब्बीना व फ़ीहि महमूमन इल्ला फ़रजल्लाहु हम्मा वला मग़मूमन इल्ला वकशफ़ल्लाहु ग़म्मा वला तालिबु हाजाति इल्ला ख़ज़ियल्लाहु हाजातहु ला यामीन फ़क़ाल अलियुम इज़्ज़न वल्लाहि फ़ुज़ना व सुइदना कज़ालिका शिय्अतुना फ़अज़ू व सुइदना फ़ी दुनिया वल आख़िरा व रब्बिल काबा अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा इन्नी अस्अलुका बिहक़्क़ि मुहम्मद व अंतल महमूद बिहक़्क़ि अली व अंतल आला बिहक़्क़ि फ़ातिमा व अंत फ़ातिरुस समावाति वल अर्ज़ बिहक़्क़िल हसन व अंतल मुहसिन व बिहक़्क़िल हुसैन व अंतल ख़दीम वल इहसान बिहक़्क़िल अइम्मति तिस्अति ताहिरीन मिन ज़ुर्रिय्यति हुसैन अलैहिस्सलाम अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद व अज्जिल फ़रजहुम
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل
صلوات محمد وعلى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
एक और सलवात करबल की कहानी जब कोई भी सुनाए
जाएगा। करबल की कहानी जब कोई भी सुनाएगा, दिल वालों की आँखों से एक दरिया बहाएगा। वो काफिला सरवर का जो शान से निकला था, सुगरा को खबर क्या थी, ना लौट के आएगा। ज़हरा ज़हरा पुरसालो 72 का, टूटी है कमर शह की, घबराओ न है अकबर। टूटी है कमर शह की, घबराओ न है अकबर। फर्जंदे नबी तेरे लाशे को उठाएगा। ज़हरा ज़हरा अकबर का भी पुरसालू, सोते ही न थे असगर, झूले में तड़पते थे। सोते ही न थे असगर, झूले में तड़पते थे। मादर को खबर क्या थी, एक तीर सुलाएगा। ज़हरा असगर का भी पुरसालू, पामाल हुआ कासिम जब घोड़ों की टापों से। पामाल हुआ कासिम जब घोड़ों की टापों से। किस तरह चचा तेरी मैयत को उठाएगा। ज़हरा ज़हरा कासिम का भी पुरसालू, था हाथों के कटने का कुछ गम न दिलावर को। था हाथों के कटने का कुछ गम न दिलावर को। सैदानियों का पर्दा अब कौन बचाएगा। ज़हरा ज़हरा अब्बास का पुरसालू, सरवर ने उठाए थे सब साथियों के लाशें। सरवर ने उठाए थे सब साथियों के लाशें। शबीर तेरा लाशा अब कौन उठाएगा। ज़हरा ज़हरा शबीर का पुरसालू, ज़हरा ज़हरा पुरसालू 72 का। सब
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद व صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
बानो कहाँ तलाश करे अपने लाल को जंगल में मार डाला है ज़हरा की हाल को बानो कहाँ तलाश शबीर ला रहे हैं मैदान में देखिए है शबीर ला रहे हैं मैदान में देखिए अपने ज़ईफ़ कांधे पे 18 साल को बानो कहाँ तलाश अम्मा की निगाहों से मेरा ज़ख्म छुपाना अम्मा की निगाहों से मेरा ज़ख्म छुपाना के बाबा मेरे सीने में सीना टूट गई है अम्मा की निगाहों से मेरा ज़ख्म छुपाना इस तरह कलेजे में उतर आई है बर्छी सीना नहीं अरमा भी माँ के हुए जख्मी चाहता मेरी माँ ने मुझे दूल्हा बनाना के बाबा मेरे सीने में सीना टूट गई है जी चाहता है आपकी तस्लीम को उठो रुतबे का तकाजा है कि ताज़ीम को उठूं मुश्किल है मगर हाथ कलेजे से हटाना के बाबा मेरे सीने में सीना टूट गई है ये सोच के अकबर का फटा जाता है सीना आवाज कहीं सुन ना ले मासूम सकीना सजाद को आहिस्ता जरा जाके बताना के बाबा मेरे सीने में सीना टूट गई है मैं जानता हूँ जिद वो बहुत तुमसे करेगी, तन्हा तुम्हें जना कभी आने न देगी, मक्तल में मेरी पालने वाली को न लाना, कि बाबा मेरे सीने में सिना टूट गई है, कातिल ने सिना तोड़ी तकल्लुम यही कहकर, सुनता हूँ कि साबिर है बहुत सिबत पैगंबर, अकबर ने कहा सब्र की मैं राज दिखाना, के बाबा मेरे सीने में सिना टूट गई है, अम्मा की निगाहों से मेरा जख्म छुपाना।
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل.
परदेस में ज़ैनब खो बैठी 18 बरस के पाले को रोते हैं बड़े सब आले नबी, रोते हैं बड़े सब आले नबी 18 बरस के पाले को, अरमान न निकला बानू का है लाश पे बानू का, पाएगी कहाँ ये कोक जली, पाएगी कहाँ ये कोक जली, 18 बरस के पाले को, दिल थाम के अकबर की मदद सरवर से ये कहती है रोकर, खो आए कहाँ खो आए कहाँ अली, 18 बरस के पाले को, परदेस में। पिदर की मौत है मरना जवान बेटे का, सफर जहान से करना जवान बेटे का, गजब है खून में भरना जवान बेटे का, सितम है जी से गुजरना जवान, सितम है जी से गुजरना जवान बेटे का, अब था कि शहे मशरफैन से छूटे, मोहिब्बो पीटो के अकबर हुसैन, मोहिब्बो पीटो के अकबर हुसैन, इस से छूटे पितर को ना दिखलाए मर गिरा कलेजा जख्मी हो जब दिल को फिर करार कहाँ उधर तो सीने अकबर से गुजरी नौ के सिना लहू इधर हुआ चश्मे इमाम लहू इधर हुआ चश्मे इमाम में दीन से रवा रब की जानिबे गर दो निगाह की शैने जमीन हिल गई एक ऐसी जमीन हिल गई एक ऐसी की शैने मारते हुए दौड़े मेरे शहीद पिसर मेरे जवान मेरे महरू मेरे शहीद पिसर मेरे हसीन मेरे यूसुफ मेरे रशीद पिसर करीब हो गई मैदान से करीब हो गई मैदान से शहीद पिसर दर पे नई वारदात है बेटा खबर नहीं मुझे दिन है केरा खबर नहीं मुझे दिन है केरा क्या है बेटा गुल पैरहन अली अकबर मेरे कली मेरे कम सुखन अली अकबर जवान हमार गरीब वतन अली अकबर उजाड़ कर गए मेरा चमन उजाड़ कर गए मेरा चमन अली अकबर की घर से यहाँ अशकिया ने लूट लिया दुआई है कि मुझे करबला दुआई है कि मुझे करबला ने लूट लिया ऐ शेर फिर पुकार मुझे नहीं बता के लाशा ये ना पुकार मुझे तेरे फिराक में ऐजीज नागवार मुझे सदा सुना दे मैं सबके पिए सदा सुना दे मैं सबके पिए मुझे के सीना हमारा जलता है कलेजा मुंह से कोई दम में आ कलेजा मुंह से कोई दम में आ निकालता है जोड़ी से बानों पिसर मिला के नहीं बताओ मैं हमें जख्म जिगर मिला के नहीं सितम के अब्र में मेरा कमर मिला के नहीं अली के लाल वाली का अली के लाल वाली का मिला के नहीं किताब लाओ मेरे मन्नता के पाले को तुम्ही से लूंगी मैं अपने मुराद तुम्ही से लूंगी मैं अपने मुराद वाले को ये सुनते ही सुल्तान महर कर दौड़े ये दर्द दिल ताकि थामे हुए जिगर दौड़े कभी तो फौज पे मानिंदे शेर नर दौड़े कभी उधर गए रोते कभी उधर गए रोते कभी इधर दौड़े कमाई बस तलाश मिली जमीन पे खून में गुलता पिसा जमीन पे खून में गुलता पिसा की लाश फरजंद नौजवान की आतश से हो चुप निकली हुई ज़बान की कमर से चेहरे पे जर्दी लबों पे जा देखी
कलेजा पड़ गया सीने में जा, कलेजा पड़ गया सीने में जा, सीना देखिए
घर के सामने बेटे का कदम उखड़ता था
हुसैन देखते थे और हुसैन देखते थे और सामने
बेटे का कदम उखड़ता था
हुसैन देखते थे और हुसैन देखते थे और उजाड़ता था। मौला मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु سورة المبارك الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد.
إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد يقول الله في كتابه الكريم والقرآن المجيد وكتاب الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Respected brothers and respected sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we continue our discussion on understanding Tawheed through Hussein alayhi salam, we covered yesterday some of the attributes of glory. Specifically, we covered knowledge and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in addition to the willpower and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alive. Tonight, inshallah, I'd like to continue our journey by examining the attributes of glory. And specifically, in addition to the attributes of glory, there are two questions that often arise when understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we seek to tackle tonight, inshallah. The first question we'll look at is what exactly is meant when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a throne. For example, we say the arsh of Allah. What does that mean? Number two, second question. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have emotion? For example, when we say that Allah is happy, Allah is sad, Allah is angry, what does the school of Ahlul Bayt say when it comes to understanding the emotion of Allah? And thirdly,
Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speak? This is a question which is often asked, which we're going to look at inshallah. So these are the three final parts of the second stage of Tawheed, Tawheed fi Sifat, which we inshallah look to finish tonight, and we'll continue on the third and fourth stages of Tawheed tomorrow inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In discussing the attributes of glory, Sifat al-Jalal, we said that these are the attributes which we negate. We say that Allah does not possess these attributes. One of them, for example, we said is that Allah does not have a body. One attribute which all schools of thought unanimously agree on within Islam, there's no dispute here, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a partner. He doesn't have, for example, a son, a father, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no partner. That's unanimous. But this next attribute, we say, Allah is not confined to space. He's not confined to time. We would say that this sounds pretty obvious. As you would say, is there really anyone who disputes this within the schools of Islam? Yes. Within the different schools of Islam, there are different understandings as to what this means. Over the past few nights, we've been looking at how any limitation that one places on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something we reject in the school of Ahlul Bayt. Because anything which limits something puts them in need, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above that. So then where is the dispute? When it comes to understanding the concept of the Arsh, or the throne of Allah. Whereas we say also the Kursi. You see, some schools, other schools in Islam, they have this belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sits on a physical Kursi. And we alluded to this a few nights ago. The question is, if we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not physical, is not bound to any time, any space, then what does it mean that Allah has a throne? What is the Arsh? The school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam explains it this way. When I say, for example, you have a king, and the king lost his throne, what am I saying? That the king lost his power. Would I be telling everybody that there was a physical chair, and the king lost that chair and he can't find it? So no, this is silly. There was, for example, a battle or a power struggle, and I say this king lost or gained the throne. Meaning what? Power. Arsh, when we talk about the Arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are we saying? It's used to signify the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say, for example, that Allah is in control of everything, He has the throne. A literal chair? No. If I tell you, for example, because they also say, it says Allah has a hand, Allah has eyes. No. Okay, but it says the hand of Allah. If I'm with you, I'm talking to you, we're playing a game I've never played before, you've played multiple times, let's say. Someone will say, this person has the upper hand. Does it mean that his hand is literally above my hand? No. He has the advantage. So when we say, for example, these are metaphors, never to be taken literally. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, any type of anaphorism or any type of way of attributing parts or body parts or partners is completely rejected. Now, there is discussion in the school of Ahlul Bayt about this Arsh. The Arsh of Allah is actually what's known as the command center. The command center of what? It's where all of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala originate from. And those commands are distributed out to the angels, for example, to carry out, to the prophets, for example, to carry out. But it's not a physical throne. It's not a physical arsh. They do say that the arsh is the holiest place in existence. Imagine. So when we say the arsh of Allah, it's that status. But never take it as something physical. So this first thing is that we negate that Allah is bound by anything, including that He has a physical throne. That's number one. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Second question, though, people often ask, we say that the only thing that matters, we talked about niyat a few nights ago, everything that you do is for one purpose. What is that? They say, for the pleasure of Allah, right? You've heard that. Everything that you do, you say, if you have not earned the pleasure of Allah, there's no value, like we talked about. So then someone asks, does Allah possess emotion? Emotion. Me, the human being. I get happy. I get sad. I get disgusted. I get scared. I go through emotions. Does Allah go through emotions? You're telling me. In the Quran, especially in the Quran, it mentions Allah is happy with these people. Allah is angered by these actions, by these people. Okay. What does the school of Ahlul Bayt say when it comes to understanding the emotions of Allah? First and foremost, let's say this. First and foremost, Allah does not have emotion. Let's put that here first. We're going to prove why. You see, emotions are physical, bear with me here for a second, they're physical changes in state. Okay? So what does that mean? I'm in one state. Then something happens. There's chemical changes that go on in the brain that causes me, for example, to get angry. So I was in one state, and now I've gone through a change, and now I'm angry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fixed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't go through changes in his state. Why? Because number one, these chemical changes are physical. Allah is not physical. Number two, if I say that he goes through these states again, I'm limiting him. So then what is meant when, for example, the Quran says very clearly, we say very clearly, the most important thing, the only thing that matters is that I've gained the pleasure of Allah, that Allah is pleased. Well, pleasure is an emotion. And we just said that Allah does not have emotions. How do we reconcile this? Let's look at what School of Ahlul Bayt say. Now, any change, because again, we talked about the fact that Allah is an essence, one essence, ahad. We talked about this a few nights ago. So emotions go through changes in one's essence, which Allah does not go through. Okay. So why does the Quran use this language? What is meant? There's two understandings of this. The first understanding of the emotions of Allah is, when I say, for example, that I'm angry, what does it mean? It means that there's going to be a consequence. So for example, we'll just give a very simple example here. For those parents, they have children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all those with children, inshallah, many of them, those who don't as well. You tell your child, clean your room. Okay. You come back, you look at the room, your child hasn't cleaned the room. Now your child knows you're not happy. There's two things that the child fears. If they really have the love that children do, they actually fear upsetting you. We're going to take this back to Allah here in a second, just bear with me. But others, what do they really fear? They know that there's now what is coming, a punishment. For example, timeout. For example, no TV for a week, just as an example. So what does that really mean? When I say that the parent is angry, for example, it means that there's a punishment coming. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's anger or there's pleasure, it indicates a reward or a punishment in the Quran, not a literal emotion. Not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally angry. No, Allah does not have emotion. He's above all of that. So the first understanding is that there is a consequence, albeit negative or positive. But the Ahlul Bayt also say, the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this language is because this is the language that we understand. Again, we said that the limited can never understand the unlimited. When I say, for example, Allah is happy, Allah is angry, I'm understanding what it means. It's the language that I speak. But don't take it literally, though. Don't take it that Allah literally is upset or literally, no, because emotions are not an attribute of Allah. But I know that, for example, if I don't pray, this is something which I'm not earning the pleasure of Allah. If I give charity, for example, if I obey my parents, for example, if I control my anger, these are things which earn the pleasure of Allah. Okay. So I keep saying pleasure of Allah. So the first thing we've understood is that this is metaphorical. It's a language that we understand. And it indicates either a reward or punishment, for example. Okay. But there is a reality here when it comes to the emotions of Allah. What is that? It's knowing that the greatest reward that you and I could ever accomplish is knowing that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted whatever we've offered. Allah, bear with me here for a second. That really is the indication of, is the real meaning of emotions. Knowing that all of the salah, all of the pure niyat that we talked about, the fasting, the generosity, all of the acts that I've dedicated solely to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only thing that I want, the best reward, is to know that Allah has accepted them. I can do everything. If Allah does not accept whatever I offer, then what value is there? I could have achieved everything, but if I know that Allah doesn't accept it, right? Imagine you have someone you really care about, parent, loved one. You work really hard. Let's say, for example, you're making some food. You've never done it before. You've worked really hard, and you're really looking forward to giving that food to that person you love. The only thing that you're really looking for is not praise. It's not any even type of reward. This is Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Bear with me here for a second. You're looking for the fact that that person, your parent, for example, your mother, father, whoever, that they're happy with this. But could you imagine, you work so hard, you give something, they look at it, and they say, I don't want this, and they throw it. Imagine. So, when we talk about the emotions of Allah, and make this dua, my dear brothers and sisters, is that every action that we do, that Allah accepts it. Why? Because there is nothing greater than knowing that a servant, a slave, has made his master happy, has made his master pleased. Allahu Akbar. Think about Karbala. Imagine. So this is the first understanding of the emotions, in quotes, of Allah. Now, very interestingly, second explanation briefly, is that there are traditions in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam which indicate that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam are who? They're the representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We agree, right? They are the representatives, the prophets, the imams, representatives of Allah. The narrations tell us that when we say the emotion, Allah is happy, Allah is sad, Allah is angry, for example, in the Quran, that actually it's really in reality the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam who are experiencing that emotion. Bear with me. Because the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam are the representatives, because the Imams alayhim as-salam are on the side of Allah, not on the side of Shaitan, right? That when I do something which goes, astaghfirullah, against Allah, which though I disobey Allah, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, they become angry on behalf of Allah. Likewise, if I do something good, if you give charity, if you hold the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, if you forgive, if you restrain your desires, if you don't commit sin, for example, the physical pleasure, the happiness, the emotion that we're talking about is experienced by Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. That's why, don't we say that Imam Azza wa Jal, Imam al-Hujjah, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that one of the reasons he's distressed and in difficulty is because of the sins of his Shia. Do we not hear this? That emotion that Imam experiences is because of the actions of us. So the narrations say that when the emotions are mentioned, it's the Ahlul Bayt who are physically experiencing the emotions, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no. Allah does not get happy or sad or distressed or no. Allah is above all emotions. That's the second piece. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Last thing. Then the last discussion concerning this is whether or not Allah speaks. You know, Islam has multiple different sciences, different subjects. For example, there's irfan, which is the study of your spiritual journey towards Allah. There's Islamic fiqh, which is the jurisprudential laws, halal, haram, makruh, etc. They're studying, for example, which is the history, specifically of Rasulullah, many different sciences, subjects one can study in Islam, they're all important. But this aqaid is called what? It's called ilm. Ilm is what? Knowledge. Ilm kalam. Kalam is what? Word. You know why theology in Islam is called ilm kalam? Because back in the day, there was such a major discussion between the scholars, between the theologians, as to whether or not Allah, not whether or not He can speak, but what it means. Imagine, such a chaotic discussion erupted. We're going to very briefly look at it. Unanimously, all schools of Islam agree that Allah has the attribute of speech. Mutakallim. We all read Quran. Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Do we not say and believe that Allah spoke to Hazrat Musa? Okay. So we all agree that's not the issue. So why is it so intense that even the subject of theology is called ilm kalam? When I want to study qiyamah, nabuwwah, imamah, tawheed, adalat, all of this is under ilm kalam, but literally means the knowledge of speech. Why? Okay. The discussion was, what does it actually mean when we say that Allah speaks? There are 4 opinions. Very briefly, we'll go through them. The first one is the opinion of the Hanbali school of thought. The Hanbali school of thought, from a theological standpoint, stated that, and bear with me, this is a little technical, we have what's called in English sump eternal. In Arabic, it's called azali. What does it mean? It means that it was always there. So we say, for example, Allah is azali, meaning He was always there. Allah was never created. We're all on that same page. So the question is, the speech of Allah, is the speech or the ability of Allah to speak, is it the same? Is it azali in the sense that Allah always has this attribute, or is it created? The Hanbali school of thought says that the speech of Allah was not something that's created. And the speech of Allah is something that cannot be separated from His essence. Okay, so bear with me. Now, we respond. We say, Allah is not bound by time and space. We just talked about this. But speech, is speech physical? Is speech, the ability to speak, the words that I'm saying, are these bound by time and space? They are. Time and space dictate that this speech has an order. I am saying this sentence, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. There's now a limitation. With Allah, every attribute, every aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have that. So we reject this and we say that, therefore, this is a proof, because it's sequential, that speech is created. That's our response to the Hanbali school. So they say that speech is a part of Allah. We reject that. Okay. Number 2, the Ash'ari school of thought, very major theological school within the Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. What do the Ash'ari say? They say not only is the speech of Allah a part, but they say that Allah has this internal process in which He almost talks to Himself, in the sense that He's thinking. So for example, when you're about to say something, generally, it's always good to do this, we don't always, but you think about what you're going to say, and then you say it, right? They say, in the Ash'ari school, they say that Allah goes through some type of, it hurts to say this, almost some type of thinking process, that Allah has to think first. I'm going to say something, but I have to plan it out. No. School of Ahl Bayt categorically rejects. You see how something as simple or appearingly simple as Tawheed, oneness of God. You see how even if you don't have, I say this with respect, humbly I say this with respect. If you leave the path of Ahl Bayt, you see how easy it is to go astray. They had Quran, but you cannot separate the two. If we did not have Ahl Bayt, what would our understanding of Allah be? That's why we always say, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My aunt would always tell me, my puppy, may Allah bless her, she'd say, you could spend your entire life in sajda, just thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He put you on the school of Ahlul Bayt. There's a reason. It's not just out of emotion. There's a real reason. Now, we respond to this. We say, no. Allah's thinking, that's a limitation. And then, because Allah doesn't have thoughts or had to think about this, Allahu Akbar. Allah has to think. Even when we say that Allah says kun fayakun, it says, Allah says be and it is. Don't ever think of it again literally that Allah has to say be and then it is. No. This is again a way for us to understand. Allah doesn't have to say kun fayakun. Allah doesn't have to do it. Allah, it just happens through His will, like we talked about. God has no essence. God has only one essence, afwan, no parts. So that's the second one. Third one, the Abbasids. You guys all know the Abbasids, of course, after the Umayyads. The Abbasids they took this discussion, they made it even more complicated about whether or not the speech of Allah is created or if it's a part of His essence. The Abbasids looked at this as an opportunity to take it and make it political. Why? What the Abbasids wanted to do is they took this discussion and then they made a whole new topic, which we won't get into now, but for another day maybe, inshallah. Was the Quran created or eternal? Allahu. You know what happened with this discussion? The Abbasids, what they were doing is they were trying to keep the people distracted in discussing these types of things. Was the Quran created? Was the speech of Allah? Why? So that the Abbasids could go and do things and torment and torture and do things that nobody's paying attention to. I ask you, is the same thing happening now today or not? The community gets distracted with things politically, they go and do other things. I don't need to go more into that. And so much so that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam urged their followers, do not get engaged in these types of discussions. Don't concern yourself with this. Because it was a distraction, it wasn't meant like that. Okay, now, speech of Allah, those were 3 points of view. What did the Imams say? The speech of Allah, when we say that Allah is mutakallim, that He speaks, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates sound, creates a voice, bear with me. And this voice that's created is separate from His essence. He creates this voice. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Nabi Musa alayhi salam, Allah is not directly speaking to Nabi Musa. That's a limitation. Rather, Allah created a voice, and that voice was delivered to that bush. And they say that the voice for 3 days communicated with Nabi Musa, that Nabi Musa had such a love for that voice. It was so beautiful that when he went back and he heard regular people talk, he was very disappointed. But it's creation. It's not a part of Allah. Speech is separate from the essence of Allah. This is the main point. Because Allah always existed, speech is created. So yes, Allah speaks. But by creating a voice, not literally speaking physically. And Allah made it, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam made it very clear that everything else is a creation. Everything else, please bear with me. Only Allah is not created. Even the Holy Quran is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is a creation. You say it's the words of Allah. Yes, created words. Allah is the only creator. Everything else is created. And to believe that Allah literally speaks is blasphemy within the school of Ahlul Bayt. Imagine. It violates the laws of Tawheed to believe that Allah physically has a voice. Rather, He created. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So inshallah, my dear brothers and sisters, we will continue the discussion of Tawheed and analyzing it, understanding Tawheed through Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam with the 3rd and 4th stages tomorrow. But tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, is the 6th of Muharram. And tonight is the night that we come and gather and remember the holy son of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Tonight is the night that we give our condolences to Layla, and that we give our condolences to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. You know, they say when it comes to the Musibat of Ahlul Bayt, specifically Karbala, the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein, they say narrated. Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam's Musibat, they say narrated often. Hazrat Ali al-Asghar alayhi salam, they say narrated often, many times. Hazrat Awla Muhammad, they say narrated. But they say when it comes to the Musibat of Hazrat Ali al-Akbar, do not narrate it often. Why? Because this musibat was so difficult and so tragic for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They say don't narrate the musibat of Hazrat Ali al-Akbar too much. Don't narrate it too often. You know, my dear brothers and sisters, 6 Muharram, I cannot mention Hazrat Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam without mentioning this point. What is it? The greatest of creation is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Very briefly, in order to really understand the musibat of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the difficulty of a father and a son, let me very quickly tell you some of the physical characteristics of Rasulullah. And you'll see why I do this in a second. Narrations say, Allama Tabatabai has in his book Sunan al-Nabi, that the face of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was so bright and so beautiful. They say that it shone like a bright moon, like a full moon. They say that the cheeks of Rasulullah were soft, and that the mouth and the nose of Rasulullah were perfect. The narrations say that the eyelids of Rasulullah had black edges, and that the eyebrows were long, and that the white in the eyes of the Holy Prophet was the whitest of white, and the black in the eyes of the Prophet was the blackest of black. Narrations say that when people used to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they were so enamored by his handsomeness and by his beauty. When you would see Rasulullah, the narrations say that his teeth were so white, so perfectly separated, and that the neck of the Holy Prophet, it shone like the most beautiful image of silver. I ask you, why on the 6th of Muharram, when narrating the musibat of Hazrat Ali al-Akbar, why do I mention the physical characteristics of Rasulullah? 10th of Muharram comes, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, every time that a family member or a companion would come, they would ask for the permission. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would say, I cannot. Please don't go, and he would not give permission. After many, many times, then he would. The only individual that the moment he goes and asks for permission, Imam al-Hussein gives is who? His son Hazrat Ali al-Akbar. They say, the narrations tell us that when this happened, before Hazrat Ali al-Akbar goes out to the battlefield, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, with tears in his eyes, he lowers his head. He raises his index finger towards the sky. He says, Oh Allah, you be the witness that I have dispatched this young man to the battlefield, to wage war with the infidels. Now look what Mullah Hussein says, who from the point of view of handsomeness, perfection, and character was most similar to the Holy Prophet. Anytime we were eager and wanted to look upon the face of Rasulullah, we would look upon the face of Hazrat Ali al-Akbar. Imagine what beauty the face of Hazrat Ali al-Akbar presented to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that he only looked like Rasulullah. This is Ali al-Akbar. This is Ali al-Akbar. Never, ever will anyone be able to understand the difficulty for Imam al-Hussein to allow his son to go towards the battlefield. Now, Imam al-Hussein continues. Imam al-Hussein says, Oh Allah, deprive them from the blessings of this earth, make their population scattered, including discord among them. Why? Because they invited me with the promise of uprising in my support. Instead, they arose against me, and they are least reluctant in spilling my blood. Narrations say after an ayat of the Quran, Imam al-Hussein looks towards Umar Assad. Knowing that Hazrat Ali al-Akbar is about to go out to the battlefield, Mullah looked towards Umar Assad. What does Mullah say? Oh, Umar Assad, may Allah deprive you from his mercy. make your affairs inauspicious and impose upon you someone who after me would cut your head off from your body and your bed. And may Allah cut off your bonds of relationship as you have overlooked my relationship with the Holy Prophet. You know how difficult it was for Imam Hussein. He wanted Umar Sa'd to know, my son is about to go out. What has my son ever done? That I have to allow my youth, the light of my eyes, to go to the battlefield. What do the narrations tell us? Allahu Akbar. This is no ordinary individual. This is Ali ibn al-Hussein. This is the son of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Narrations say Hazrat Ali al-Akbar in his youth puts the armor on, goes towards the battlefield to fight. The Maqtal says that Hazrat Ali al-Akbar goes like a lion roaring. Poetry that Ali al-Akbar recites, he says, I am Ali, son of Hussein, son of Ali. By Allah, we are closer to the Holy Prophet, and I will attack you with my spear until it gets bent. Look at the bravery of Ali al-Akbar. I will defend my father with the sharp sword, as it is expected from a Hashemite youth. How Ibn Ziyad dares to issue orders about us. Allahu Akbar. Ali al-Akbar goes, fights extremely bravely. Narrations mention over 120, around 120 of the opposition, Ali al-Akbar kills. But in doing so, there were many wounds that Ali al-Akbar faces. There was many difficulties, and the thirst and the weight of the armor was bearing hard upon Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam. Narrations tell us he goes back towards the camp. He goes towards his father. He says, oh my father, the armor is so heavy and I am so thirsty. Do you have any water for me to drink, oh my father? May you never see the day, I ask you and I pray, may you never see the day that your son asks you something and you're not able to give him what he asks for. As-salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Narrations say that Imam Hussein says, I don't have, but have patience inshallah. In a few moments, my grandfather will give you all the water. Narrations say Imam takes a ring. He places the ring inside of the mouth of Ali al-Akbar to try and get some water. Ali al-Akbar at this moment, he goes back towards the battlefield. Imam Hussein alayhi salam knew this will be the last time I will see my son Ali al-Akbar. Narrations tell us that there was an evil man on the side of Yazid's army by the name of Murwa ibn Miqad. You know what this Lanati individual says? He says, may the sins of all the Arabs be upon my neck if this youth comes near me and I don't inflict sorrow upon his father's heart. Allahu Akbar. The narrations say, as Ali al-Akbar is fighting, he kills an additional 80 individuals. But now they attack him from all sides. This Murwa goes and takes a lance and places it into the back of Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar calls out. Then this individual takes a sword. They say this strike was so difficult, it splits the head of Ali al-Akbar open. Ali al-Akbar calls out, As-salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Narrations say that as a result, Ali al-Akbar is losing control. His arms fall onto the eyes of the horse. There's so much blood falling onto the eyes of the horse, and in doing so, the horse, instead of going back to the camp of Hussein, goes back towards the camp of Umar Asad. When the horse goes towards Umar Asad, the enemies surround Ali al-Akbar. They strike him from all sides with a spear in his chest and his head open. They cut his body into pieces. When they go back, Imam Hussein goes towards the body of Ali al-Akbar and calls out. And then they say, Imam Hussein, carrying the body of Ali al-Akbar, looks at the mouth of Ali al-Akbar. There's blood on the teeth. Mawla wipes the blood off of the teeth of Ali al-Akbar. He begins to kiss the face of his holy son. And they say that in a few moments, you will be drinking the water of Rasulullah. Now some narrations mention that they say that Ali al-Akbar in the final moments smiled and then he cried. Mawla says, why do you smile? Why do you cry? I smile because in a few moments Rasulullah will give me water. But I cry because I see my grandmother and she is crying, Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein! Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره ماتم حسين
अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर जख्म से दिखाऊं मैं कैसे जख्म दिल से दिखाऊं मैं कैसे तेरा लाशा उठाऊं मैं कैसे अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर लाशे अकबर पे शाह जब पहुंचे दिल को हाथों से ताम कर बोले तेरी फुरकत में अली अकबर आग दिल में मेरे लगा रही है आग दिल की बुझाऊं मैं कैसे आग दिल की बुझाऊं मैं कैसे तेरा लाशा उठाऊं मैं कैसे अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर तू है करियल जवान है बेटा बाप तेरा ज़ईफ है कितना नूर आंखों का हो गया रुखसत मुझको आता नहीं नजर खैमा लेके खैमों में जाऊं मैं कैसे लेके खैमों में जाऊं मैं कैसे तेरा लाशा उठाऊं मैं कैसे अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर जिसने 18 साल पाला था कैसे देखेगी वो तेरा लाशा तेरी शादी का था जिसे अरमा कैसे झेलाएगी वो तेरे सदमा तेरी माँ को बताऊं मैं कैसे तेरी माँ को बताऊं मैं कैसे तेरा लाशा उठाऊं मैं कैसे अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर अकबर मेरा सहर अवाला अकबर हुसैन
कदम कदम पे आवाज देते जाते हैं उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को बोले होंगे हुसैन ये रोकर उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को नौजवान लाश है ज़ईफ़ी है मेरी नजरों से देख मंजर को, कैसे हम शीर को संभालूंगा, मैं संभाले हुए हूँ अकबर को, तेरा एहसान होगा ये मुझ पर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, इसके सीने से लेके नाम अली, मैंने बर्ची कभी निकाली है, इम्तिहान दे चुकी मेरी गुर्बत, अब तेरी बेकसी की बारी है, तू भी इस वक्त याली कहकर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, दो नगीने थे इसकी झोली में, दोनों अकबर पे कर दिए सदका, सब्र ऐसा के अपने बेटों पर, मैंने रोते इससे नहीं देखा है, मगर अब ये लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को, ला रहा हूँ मैं लाशे अकबर, उम्मे लैला संभाल ज़ैनब को,
Hussein, Hussein,
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 Hussein, Hussein.
Hussein, Hussein.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا نبي الله السلام عليك ورحمة الله العالمين السلام عليك سيد الوسيم أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا أبا محمد حسن بن علي المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين مظلوم الشهيد السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وجميع شهداء كربلاء خصوصا سيدي مولاي أبو الفضل العباس يا ابن أمير المؤمنين ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليكم جميع نعمة التسعة الطاهرين من ذرية الحسين عليهم السلام السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلام عليك شمس الشموس السلام عليك يا المدفون بردتوس السلام عليك أبو الحسن علي بن موسى يا رضا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان علمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان أجل الله تعالى فرجك سال الله مخرجك جعلنا من أوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة واليوم وهذا أين حتى تسكنه أرضك وتمتعه فيها سبيلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
قادري